Mike, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Welcome, please take a seat.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for working with my English only. So
Oh,
I
no,
appreciate it.
no. Thank you for accepting. And thank you so much for being here. And as we discussed in our prep call, the data is king, and we all know that because we all have a lot of data. We just need to know how to better leverage it and make a great use out of it. And I know that you did a study for ARDA about the main generational trends that we have. Could you share some of the main findings that you did over the generational preferences over your study?
Yeah, absolutely.
And give me just a second. Si alguien necesita, recuerden que tenemos este cosito para la traducción aquí afuera.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful, thank you for having me. If I can give a little bit of context about the history of Digital Ignite and how we got to where we are. I spent 10 years in the industry. In the 2000s, I worked in Las Vegas. Right after 9/11, got a job as a greeter, OPC'd, was running a couple sales teams by the end of it, and it was a wonderful experience. So Digital Ignite partners with ARDA. We're very excited to be here with AMDETUR, and we're very passionate about helping grow the timeshare industry using performance data technology. I remember back to when I was an OPC and a greeter, and the old general consensus going back 25 years was amongst the general population, about 15% of the people were very inclined or open to timeshare. 85% were not. However, with owners, the number went into contra, where it was 85% of the people were extremely satisfied with their purchase, and 15% were not. What we have found, and the data I'm going to share is something we did uniquely with College of Charleston with their data science division, is we surveyed over 600 Gen Z and millennial potential buyers down the road, and we found some interesting things that, as the industry, I think we need to keep our eyes on so we can continue to package our offerings to grow with the next coming generations. When you look broadly at Gen Z and younger millennials under 35, the acceptance rate goes from around 15% in the open market to under half, and with Gen Z it goes as low as 2%. Simple fact of the matter is that Gen Z is looking for experiences, and that some of the data that's out there says that they're very, very not in tune with asset purchases and getting tied down. Now, this isn't just specific to the timeshare industry. It carries over in some of our other verticals. We're key in sports and entertainment, gym memberships, and e-commerce. For example, it used to be that you would go to a gym, you get a subscription, you stay at the same gym for a couple of years. Now, a lot of our clients are getting great results by doing sampler packages behind it. Entertainment, the sports industry, they have to get more experiential. They want entertainment. They want it to be more than a baseball game, more than a soccer game, more than a football game. They want to get a whole experience behind it. And a lot of this does correlate over to the timeshare industry. There's been a really significant change in attitudes in Gen Z and millennials, specifically post-COVID. The whole concept, especially amongst American buyers, has gone from, let's own something, let's grow our portfolio, grow our wealth, to I want to experience life. I don't want to be tied down. I want to get as much as I can out of my partners, my vendors I'm working with, and not be tied down in a heavy level to any one specific person until I'm very, very comfortable with them. One other key takeaway before we dive deeper, with timeshare, with the data, amongst all generations, not just with Gen Z and millennials, the overall knowledge of the timeshare industry is very, very low, which creates a Dunning-Kruger effect, where you let companies like the exit industry come and take the narrative away, which Digital Ignite's been a big part in combating with our partnerships. So that's something that we'll talk a little bit more about in the next few slides, but it's something that we should also focus on, especially with Gen Z and millennials, where there's a bit of rejection compared to Gen X and the boomer population.
So based on all these findings, and I'm assuming it's the next slide's coming down, how should the new sales and marketing approach be to overcome all these objections of the lack of knowledge and the confidence and whatever, and make a successful process along the way?
Great question. And here's the cool thing about it. We had a bunch of data scientists survey a random sampling of hundreds of people, and they're very dry, they're data scientists, and the sales and marketing, the timeshare industry can really sell the sizzle and package it up for everybody. So if you take what I'm about to tell you, it was presented in the most scientific method possible. And if we take just a little bit of it and apply it to the sales process, we're going to see some really, really good results. As I mentioned before, the way timeshare is currently marketed and promoted, whether it's an asset purchase, points, a long-term lease, it gives complete anxiety to people under 35. They don't want it, they look that they're tied down, and they're generally rejecting it in the open market. However, at my direction with the head of data science, Dr. Esta Shaw, we posed a secondary question where we pitched timeshare as it's listed out in its current process, and then we repackaged it and presented the exact same benefits and services that timeshare offers, but instead of it being an asset purchase, we made it a subscription model for mental health, physical health, and experiential, and the acceptance rate went from below 8% to over 80% immediately. So to give everybody, say that one more time, if you take the way timeshares presented it and you repackage it to, hey, this is a subscription service for your health, your wellness, it's going to give you the great experiences that you want as a young traveler, the acceptance rate went through the roof. So to kind of summarize, we saw two big evolutions that everybody here I hope would be open for in the next decade or two behind it to target the younger generations. Not only do we need to look at possibly getting entry package, sampler packages with a subscription to health and mental wellness, but also do some education to what timeshare is to stop the incessant noise from the exit industry and contrarians to the industry. It allows us to take the narrative back, and we can reframe the product and the offering to be very, very successful with Gen Z and millennials.
Which is a great news for us here in this region, because for the fact that we're not deeded, but we're right to use, we overcome that objection. So now we only need to work on the all experiential and wellness, which is very much linked to the next speaker that we'll have, of how timeshare is going to bring you better mental health, better emotional health, and package it all around that. And it all sounds amazing, but how would we make this cost effective? Because cost, as you know, is a key player in the success of our sales.
Absolutely, and yeah, we gotta manage tour costs, acquisition costs, the whole 9 yards. So the way we look at doing that is very targetedly getting the messaging out ahead of time. To give some specific examples, obviously everybody's their own case and their own case study. You know, you have a group of people that are coming on from mini vacations, they're coming to tour and experience the resort. You could have the opportunity to get some very low-cost messaging direct to them using digital offerings, any email marketing you have to get the awareness messaging ahead of time. And by having a staff, a sales line, a marketing line that's very in tune with what the generation wants, what the buyer wants, with this industry has done so well. You know, we sell experiences, we sell the emotion, we sell what a fantastic time it is to get that vacation and to enjoy with your loved ones. It's just a simple matter of repositioning it behind it all to attract the next generation. So, you know, to kind of summarize what the data has told us, the younger generations prioritize experience over assets. And you're right, in Mexico, in Central America, you guys are positioned very, very well for this. And there's a lot of demand to come experience travel outside of the United States too. So I think if there's anybody that's well positioned, it's the people that are sitting in this room. Remember, if you can reframe the offering as an experience, a subscription model for your health and your wellness, even if it's only an entry package, the acceptance rate to the general market will go up to over 80% behind it all. The younger generations, people south of 35, younger than that, they prioritize mental health and self-care. That's what's important to them right now. That may change over the next decade, but it's what's coming up now. And they want subscription flexibility over ownership commitment. That's so key. We found that once you get the initial purchase and you can get comfortable with the client, there's going to be offerings for upsells, longer, larger packages behind it all too. So that creates an opportunity. And again, what the data says, every resort, every developer is their own story, but create wellness first vacation offerings or clubs to target Gen Z and younger millennials. They embrace new channels. So yes, everything is digital with them. Email, Social content, direct digital ads are going to be key to keep the cost low and get the targeted messaging to them to educate them prior to coming on tour. Shift messaging from investment to well-being. It's all about the client. It's what they want so they can make the purchase. Make it about their mental health, the experience, yoga on the beach, the beautiful resort, the palm trees, getting away, unplugging. And then you have the opportunity to build lifetime value through a very satisfied client. You gave them what they wanted, and they will invest more with you over time.
Now let me ask you something. Now that we need to cover different segments, and you've already shared a little bit about the different channels that we need to reach out to cover these segments, and the sales pitch itself, it's going to be different based on the generations. But then, should we define two marketing strategies depending on the different generations that we're trying to attract?
That's a great question, and my answer to that broadly is the data will always tell the story on what to do that. If you're looking at the overall audience, the answer may very well be yes. Again, what a younger boomer family that's still a customer, or an older Gen X or a younger Gen X like myself is going to be interested in is going to be different than what a younger generation person is going to be in. So that's not unique just to timeshare. Like I said, we're seeing that across all the verticals we're proficient in. And I think a lot of industries are taking this embracement too. Yes, there might be different tiered approaches and different pitches. Again, each developer will have to kind of look at their own data to build that story, but broadly speaking, yes, that's a fair statement.
And let me ask you something that is pretty controversial, and we were discussing this a couple of days ago. How effective are influencers becoming? Because everybody's using influencers, and they've got millions of followers, and they've got good, they deliver a good brand awareness, but not so much conversion into sales. So how do you see the trend of influencers? Do you think that's a good strategy to follow right now before things change, or is it gone and it's really just brand awareness and not a good ROI to invest in influencers?
So let me use that to tie in one of the main themes we have here. You're very correct with influencers, and to get the ROI, you've got to be very, very detailed and very disciplined on making sure you're getting the right person, the right messaging. And anytime you use a third party that has some creative flexibility, they'll take the messaging into their own hands. Again, broadly speaking, without looking at any data sets, the right influencer, we talk about the awareness to eliminate the Dunning-Kruger effect, especially talking to these younger generations who embrace influencers strongly. This is a great opportunity to get that general knowledge piece out there for them. Obviously, you want your sales and marketing team, your online presence to convert the mini vacation, the package, and the sale. But you could use influencers, broadly speaking, to hey, this is timeshare 2.0. It's about your mental health. It's your wellness. It's better than Airbnbs. It's better than, just booking a hotel. Here's why. And then you let your sales and marketing team take over. So that's a broad answer to your question, but that's where I would start looking at everything.
And of course, social listening is key to control the narrative, right? And to your point, educate potential buyers before they come into your sales room.
Yes, and that's something that the entire industry, everybody can really get better on, but that is something that we feel the industry as a whole could embrace further. The more people know coming into it, because let's face it, right now somebody gets off a cruise ship or they're doing a mini vac, they kind of know what they're doing, but they've got their uncle, their aunt, whatever they're listening to in the radio that's kind of sucking the air out of the room prior to going into the presentation. Especially with the influencers you have, if you match up an IAM code or an IP address, you can get that positive messaging, that educational piece right into them ahead of time. Social listening is always important. It's 2025. The narrative can change overnight. So yes, you always have to be ahead of that, but that's not necessarily a negative thing if you approach it the right way.
Absolutely. You can leverage and control that conversation.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Any other important insight that you want to share from the study that you did with Arlo before we wrap up?
The biggest thing is that with change and looking at it a little bit differently, timeshare is a very viable product, and personally, and with our own data sets, if it's framed right, that's the biggest takeaway from this. There's a really broad acceptance rate in the general population, significantly above what the old mantra of 15% of the people accept it, we got to sell everything else. So we feel if you take the data, and obviously each developer would have to look at their own data and draw their own nuance behind it, it's an opportunity, not a hurdle to overcome. It's just how you look at it and embrace the data.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and for sharing all those insights of the interesting study that you did. Definitely, it's an ongoing changing process of how we need to approach the market to be successful. But studies and findings like yours are leading us in the right path. So thank you so much for sharing and for taking the invitation to participate in AMDETUR.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike.